Hello, everyone. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that this interview is taking place on the stolen lands of Bunurong and the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations. We acknowledge and pay respects to the traditional custodians and the ancestors of the lands and waters across Australia where our content reaches and on which AMES partner organisations stand. My name is Sarah Gasali, and welcome to AMES Australia's latest Refugee Week conversation. Today, I'm talking to the Commonwealth Coordinator General for Migrant Services, Alison Watkins. Alison, thank you so much for joining me.
You're very welcome, Sarah. I'm very pleased to be here.
Awesome, me too. I think we'll just get started. Do you mind telling us a little bit about your work as Coordinator General for Migrant Services?
Sure. So basically, my roles come about because the government was looking at how and whether we could do things better as a country in terms of refugee and humanitarian entrance settlement. And they asked Peter Shergold to do a review of the whole system and look at ways that we could improve how the system was working. And one of the recommendations of Peter Shergold's review was that they establish this Coordinator General role. And the idea was to have somebody who they called it a centre of gravity, but somebody who was looking at how the whole system worked, linking bits together, and really thinking at that national level, how are we going in terms of refugee settlement? And so I work with other Commonwealth, like I'm in Home Affairs, I work with other Commonwealth agencies, I work with state governments, I work with local councils, and I spend a lot of my time talking to community groups and working with community groups who are actively at the front line in terms of settling. And then I also, a lovely part of my job is meeting refugees and hearing about their settlement journeys and what it's been like settling in Australia. And from their view, what could we do differently or better to make that process work more?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. And just out of curiosity, how long have you been in this role for?
So I started in December 2019. So it's been a sort of funny, it's a funny time. I thought that I would be doing a lot more travel. And then of course, by March of 2020, we had COVID, and then, travel was very difficult and everyone was hunkered down and dealing with the immediate stuff of the pandemic. So it'd be fair to say it's been a much more different time than I imagined that I would have because of the effect of the pandemic last year.
And how do you think COVID has impacted Australia's migration and humanitarian program as a whole?
So I think, of course, I think the pandemic has touched like all aspects of our lives, and of course the humanitarian program has been affected just like everyone else. So the most obvious thing is that we've only had a very few number of people be able to cross the border. We have had some refugees coming in while the borders have been closed, but they're normally emergency cases and we don't take very many of those, but we have had people cross the border. So of course that's the first thing that we've we haven't had the numbers coming in that we would normally come in. But I also think it's probably really affected the settlement process for people, because we've had some people who've arrived and had to go to have their first experience of Australia being in quarantine, which is not what the normal journey is at all. And then I think for people who don't understand how the system works, who might not have good English language skills, and who are trying to navigate an unfamiliar environment, I think it's been quite challenging, the effect of COVID. Concerned about kids who haven't had a chance to go to school, for example. So I think it has been really incredibly disruptive to the settlement of people. Yeah.
And how do you think it's impacted the employment of refugee and migrant communities as well?
So interestingly, we can see that, like the rest of the population, there was a big swing up of unemployment amongst refugees after COVID. So I think before, it didn't go up, it didn't double, but it close to doubled, which I think is not surprising, because we went from, I think, having 600,000 unemployed people in Australia to nearly double that.
Yeah.
In terms of people who are on job seeker and in job active. So there was a big increase in the numbers. And what we can see is as those numbers decrease, it's taking a little longer for refugee and humanitarian entrants to get back to work than it is for the general population. So they're finding jobs a bit more quickly, I think, than other people.
Through your work, how have you found the impact of learning English on the settlement of refugee and migrant communities?
So one of the really fantastic things I did last year was work on the reforms to the Australian migrant, the adult migrant English program, so Australia's migrant English program. And that was really fantastic. And that led to legislation that came in April this year, which has really removed a lot of barriers to people learning English. But as part of doing that work, it was really good to do something just to understand a bit more about the challenge of language learning for people who don't speak English. So just understanding that for anyone learning a new language is really complex and it takes a lot of time, and that people learn at different rates. And we know young people are much better at picking up, like young people learn languages at a much faster rate than adults. It really depends. Sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I'm just saying I agree.
Yeah, and I think it really depends what your previous schooling was. It really interesting concept about the distance of your language from English. So, for example, if you're a French speaker and you're learning English, well, that's a much more simpler job than if you're an Arabic speaker learning English. It's going to take you much longer to learn if you come from an Arabic background or a Vietnamese background, for example, learning English. It's the distance between those two languages is quite significant. So it was really good to be reminded of I think it's really obvious that learning English makes a difference to people, like in how they settle, and English is, the way that most of it, it's just an important part of the settlement journey. But it's good to be reminded that it's not easy. It's not a certificate you can buy at the shop. It requires a lot of work from people, and it's quite stressful and hard to learn another language. So it's made me feel like, isn't it incredible how well people do and how dedicated people are, and how much effort people put in to get their language up. Now, the fantastic thing about the reforms that we brought in April is what we've seen is a whole lot of people go back into the migrant English classes. So we've had about 4,000 new students come back into the program, and people who were studying English before but had given up have now come back in as well. So I'm really excited about the fact that we've been able to improve the opportunities for people to get better at English.
I think it's probably important to note that learning English, there's no end destination. You're always learning, even if it's your first language or your second language, you're always learning, and I think that's an important thing to remember.
I think that's right too. It is. There's never a point where you can go, that's it.
Yeah.
I've done it and I can put that away. I think
that's very true.
Right. And those people who live their lives with two languages, it's a very important set of skills.
And I agree. Yeah. How do you think how important is community connection for settlement of refugees?
So it's one of the things that's really struck me doing the job. And I think it's probably obvious, isn't it? Because what we're wanting in settlement is for people to feel at home. I mean, we're really in the process of inviting refugees and humanitarian entrants to become Australian and to feel like they belong here. And what we can see is that, first of all, the community, your ethnic community, your religious community, community organisations of people you relate to in that way are really incredibly important in providing help and support people who've done the journey of becoming, of learning how to live in Australia and becoming Australian, helping other people to go on the same journey. So we know that's really important. But we also know that it's really important for refugees to have and humanitarian entrance to have good connections with other groups in Australia. So not just to be talking to people within their own diaspora group, if you like, but to really be building relationships across the whole community. And there's just, I've just seen some really, I feel like there's really great examples. I think the desire is all, like, from what I can see, and the refugees that I've talked to, people want to connect more broadly. Like, they want to feel like they belong, and they want to make friends, and they want to feel included. Like, I think that's a human thing. And I love that film that came out last year, Rosemary's Way, which I think, have you seen that? But, you know, just talks about that feeling of just wanting to connect with people. It's such a beautiful movie. But I think I've just seen these great examples of like, I went to Armidale recently, and the local Rotary Club are helping some of the Yazidi people who've settled there to build agricultural businesses for themselves. And it's just a lovely project where the Rotary Club, working with the Yazidi people, they're working collaboratively, and it's giving something to both. It's building strong ties between both of those groups, and both of those groups are getting really a fantastic experience from it. And we know that where we see community sponsorship programs, we know that people who sponsor and help refugees directly settle in other countries like Canada just get so much satisfaction from it. So I really think that one of the things we need to strengthen in Australia is to feel like, you know, we're doing this community connection better, and we're making people, for those people who are in the host society who are not recent migrants, are putting effort into making people feel at home.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. Just one more question. What are your thoughts on Refugee Week?
So perhaps I've already just said some of this, but like, the theme of Refugee Week is unity, and in the department we've been celebrating community connectedness and resilience. And I have felt really privileged over the last, you know, since I've been in this role, both to see the efforts that refugees and humanitarian entrants make to settle effectively and to learn everything they've got to learn and build all the new skills that they need to build to be successful here and to feel at home. And I've also been just really pleased to see other community groups supporting that effort. And I think last year, going through COVID, and there are always things that we would have wanted to do better, but I think as a whole, as a country, we really saw people come together in unity to overcome the challenges that they and other people were facing. So I think unity is a great theme, and I think we as a country are really demonstrating how we can do that. I think there's room for us to continue to get better and better at it.
Well, I just wanted to do a little bit of a conclusion. So I just wanted to say thank you for taking time out of your day. And I think this is going to be a really great segment to add to the theme of unity for Refugee Week. Yeah, thank you. I'm really lucky to have this chat with you.
It's great, really great to meet you, Sarah.
Thank you, Alison.
Take care.